Close your eyes for a moment and imagine waking up in a world with no houses, no roads, no electricity, no shops, and not a single human invention you depend on every day. No phone to guide you, no fridge to feed you, no soft bed waiting at night. Instead, you open your eyes to the sound of distant growls, the cold bite of morning air, and the knowledge that the world around you is not built for your comfort. It is built for your survival. Welcome to prehistoric Earth. Here, nature is not gentle or forgiving. Everything around you is wild, unpredictable, and often deadly. The ground is uneven, the weather shifts without warning, and every shadow could be hiding something hungry. Creatures larger, faster, and stronger than you roam freely, following the ruthless rules of survival. And in this world, you are not at the top of the food chain. You're barely one step above the menu. People in prehistoric times didn't have the luxuries we consider basic today. Food wasn't something you bought. It was something you chased, trapped, gathered, or fought for. Water wasn't clean or filtered. You had to search for it and hope it didn't make you sick. If you were cold, you needed fire, if you could even figure out how to make one. If you were hurt, you had no medicine but what nature offered, and nature didn't always give generously. Every task you do effortlessly today, getting dressed, eating breakfast, staying safe, was a full-time challenge for prehistoric humans. And unlike you, they were built for it. Their muscles were stronger, their instincts sharper, their senses more alert. Their entire lives were shaped by the constant pressure to survive. They didn't worry about schedules or notifications. They worried about predators, weather, and finding enough food before the sun went down. Imagine trying to sleep with no walls to protect you. Imagine living in a world where darkness wasn't peaceful but crawling with danger. Imagine walking through forests without knowing which berries might save you or kill you. Imagine hunting without weapons, navigating without maps, and surviving without second chances. Most modern people wouldn't last long in such conditions, not because we are weak, but because we are no longer trained by our environment to survive them. Our senses have grown softer, our instincts quieter, and our bodies more comfortable. Prehistoric life demanded constant movement, awareness, and adaptation. One wrong decision could mean injury, starvation, or becoming the prey instead of the hunter. In this series, we're going to step into that ancient world and explore why living even one single day in prehistoric times would push you far beyond your limits. From brutal landscapes and unpredictable animals to the daily struggles of food, shelter, and survival, you're about to discover just how harsh, wild, and unforgiving our early world truly was. So prepare yourself. The prehistoric world is waiting, and it doesn't care whether you survive. Imagine this. You open your eyes, and everything is wrong. There are no walls around you, no roof, no soft bed, no phone beside your pillow. Instead, you're lying in dirt, actual dirt, cold, packed, and gritty, with a few fat beetles crawling over your hand like you're just another rock in their way. The air smells like wet moss, smoke, mud, rotting plants, and something else you can't quite name, until you realize it's probably animal dung. Welcome to prehistoric Earth. Before you even manage to sit up, your body feels like it's been dropped from a 2-story building. Your back hurts, your shoulders ache, your neck feels like it has been used as a pillow by an elephant. And there's a reason. you didn't sleep 8 hours in a climate-controlled bedroom with a mattress designed by ergonomic scientists. You slept curled up on the ground, exposed to the cold, trying not to be eaten by things that absolutely do not care that you're having a rough morning. And this isn't camping. Camping is pretending you're rugged while you cook marshmallows with a flashlight nearby, a sleeping bag zipped up to your chin, and a car 30 steps away. Prehistoric life is the version of camping where nature looks you directly in the eye and says, "Oh, you think you're tough? Cute." The first thing you notice, before hunger, before fear, is that the world is loud. In a modern city, noise comes in predictable shapes. Cars, voices, machines humming, someone shouting on the phone. Out here, every sound has teeth. Leaves crunching? Could be a rabbit. Could be a wolf. A low growl in the distance? Might be a big cat. Might be something bigger than a big cat. Even birds aren't comforting. Their shrieks echo across the trees like alarms you can't turn off. And then there's the cold. It seeps into your bones. No sweaters, no heaters. Your prehistoric wardrobe is literally your own body heat. If you want warmth, you find fire, or you die. It's that simple. But you're not even thinking about fire yet. You're thinking about the fact that your stomach is screaming. You've been awake for maybe 2 minutes, and you're already starving. There are no grocery stores, no cereal, no vending machines, no apps that deliver food to your door. Food is out there somewhere, sprinting away from you, hiding in bushes, or growing on plants that might kill you if you guess wrong. You look around and see other people, your tribe. They're not wearing clothes so much as animal hides thrown over their shoulders. Their hair is tangled and wild. Their bodies are lean, strong, shaped by non-stop movement and survival. And they look at you like, are you going to keep sitting there, or are you planning on surviving the day? Because here's the truth. Prehistoric life is not a slow, peaceful age of gentle simplicity. It is a full-time crisis. You don't get days off. You don't get to relax. If you're not gathering food, you're running from predators. If you're not running, you're hiding. If you're not hiding, you're preparing the tools you need to survive the next threat. And if you mess up even once, that's it. Game over. Your tribe is already gearing up for the day. They stretch, grunt, and gather their stone tools, sharpened pieces of rock tied to wooden sticks with animal tendons. Primitive? Yes. Effective? Absolutely. These tools are the prehistoric version of your smartphone. Without them, you're basically helpless. You try to stand, but your legs wobble. You've been awake for 10 minutes, and your brain is already overheating, trying to process everything at once. The cold, the hunger, the danger, the lack of anything familiar. In this world, there are only 2 mental states, alert or dead. Someone hands you a piece of dry meat. It's tough, leathery, salty, and tastes vaguely like old boots. But it's the most delicious thing you've ever eaten because your body knows you need it. No preservatives, no seasoning, no cooking, just raw survival. The group starts walking through the forest. There are no paths. You're stepping over roots, pushing through bushes, ducking under branches, and trying not to slip on wet rocks. Every few seconds, you hear something move in the underbrush. You want to assume it's harmless, but in this world, assuming anything harmless is an act of pure stupidity. A rustle could be a deer, or a boar, or a giant hyena with jaws strong enough to crush bones like pretzels. A woman from the tribe makes a hand gesture, Silent communication is essential because speaking loudly can get you killed. She points toward tracks on the ground. You stare at them, but you have no idea what you're looking at. To you, it's just a bunch of dents in the dirt. To them, it's a road map. They can tell what direction the animal is moving, how fast it was going, how long ago it passed, whether it's worth chasing. This knowledge didn't come from school. It came from repeating daily life or death decisions for years, from childhood. You were learning the alphabet at that age. They were learning which animals could kill them. As you continue walking, the sun begins to climb, and the forest heats up. The cold is replaced by humidity so thick you feel like you're swimming through the air. Sweat drips down your face. Your feet hurt. You already want a break. The tribe doesn't. You walk until they stop, and they stop only when they have a reason. Suddenly, a sharp whistle. Everyone freezes. You freeze too, your heart slamming against your ribs. That whistle wasn't random. It was a warning. Then you hear it, a low, rumbling sound coming from the trees behind you. Something big is moving. The tribe tightens their grip on their weapons. Someone grabs your arm and pulls you behind a tree. Every instinct in your modern brain tells you to scream, run, do something dramatic. But in prehistoric life, drama equals death. You hold your breath. Your muscles tense. Your heart pounds so loudly you're convinced it's announcing your location. And through the bushes, you see it. A massive shape moving on 4 legs, fur bristling, nostrils flaring. A prehistoric bear. Bigger than any bear alive today. Stronger, faster, hungrier. This is the moment you realize something. Humans were never the kings of the wild. Not at first. Not even close. Out here, we were nervous, flimsy beings armed with rocks and courage, hiding from predators that could snap us in half without trying. The bear sniffs the air. If it smells you, you're done. If it decides to charge, you're done even faster. Your survival depends on the hope that this beast simply isn't hungry right now. And finally, it wanders off. Your lungs release the breath you didn't realize you were holding. Your legs shake. The tribe continues walking like nothing happened because near-death experiences are just part of the schedule. Your schedule. You're starting to understand that this world does not pause for you to catch up. It doesn't care how scared you are. It doesn't care how confused you feel. The prehistoric world is a treadmill set to maximum speed, and if you can't keep up, it throws you off the back without apology. As the day goes on, you gather roots and berries, constantly checking to make sure they're not poisonous. You learn how to dig for tubers, how to find water without drinking from stagnant puddles full of parasites. Every task feels like a test you didn't study for. By midday, you're exhausted. Your arms burn, your legs shake, your mind feels foggy from adrenaline, fear, and overload. And the worst part? This is only day 1. This is the warm-up. Prehistoric life expects you to go through this every day, from childhood to death, if you even make it to adulthood. Night is coming, and prehistoric nights make prehistoric days look friendly. You look at the tribe. You look at yourself. You look at the landscape that is trying very sincerely to kill you. And you realize the truth. You wouldn't last a day here, not even close. If you somehow made it through your first night in prehistoric times, dodging predators, surviving the cold, and resisting the urge to curl up under a tree and quit, then congratulations, you've beaten the odds. But before you start feeling proud, thinking you're basically a natural-born cave dweller, reality is about to smack you harder than a mammoth's trunk. Because sunrise in the prehistoric world doesn't mean warmth and peace and birds chirping. It means work. Endless, grinding, back-breaking work that starts before the sun fully rises and ends only when exhaustion wins. And even then, danger doesn't stop just because you're tired. The day begins early because prehistoric people didn't have the luxury of sleeping until noon. They woke when the world woke, often with a sharp awareness that every hour of daylight mattered. You could lounge around if you wanted, but that meant going hungry. No refrigerators, no leftovers, no quick snacks. Every meal had to be earned fresh, daily. And earning a meal in this world meant hunting, gathering, scavenging, tracking, carrying, scraping, cutting, or grinding, preferably all of the above. Food wasn't just hard to find, it was unpredictable. Maybe berries were in season. Maybe they weren't. Maybe you'd catch a small animal. Or maybe that animal outran you, mocked you, and vanished into the bushes while your stomach growled in protest. Prehistoric humans needed a constant stream of calories just to function. And if you're used to sitting for most of the day, tapping on a keyboard, sipping tea, scrolling through notifications, well, your modern-day stamina wouldn't last long. The sheer physical effort of living back then would feel like punishment. Imagine following a hunting party at dawn. They move quickly and quietly, communicating with subtle gestures, tracking footprints and broken twigs as though reading a story written on the ground. You, meanwhile, are gasping for breath 5 minutes in. Your legs burn. Your feet sting, because prehistoric terrain is not paved, cushioned, or friendly. Every step is on something sharp, uneven, or slippery. You slip once, just once, and suddenly you're a liability, a noisy one. In a world where stealth means survival, you might as well be shouting through a megaphone. And even if you manage to keep up, the actual hunt is far more violent, dangerous, and chaotic than any nature documentary suggests. Animals do not sit politely and wait to become dinner. They run, they kick, they fight back with teeth and horns and hooves. If you're lucky, the hunters bring down something small, like a hare. If they're ambitious, maybe they try for something larger. But here's the thing. When prehistoric hunters went after big game, they often risked everything. One wrong move and the prey became the predator. A charging aurochs could gore a man instantly. A wild boar could slice open a leg in seconds. And you, untrained, unarmed, inexperienced, you wouldn't even see the danger until it was too late. Let's assume you avoid being trampled, bitten, kicked, or skewered. You still have a problem. You're not strong enough to help carry anything back. Even a small carcass is surprisingly heavy, and prehistoric people carried it over long distances without complaint because it was necessary. You'd lift one end, wobble like a newborn deer, and drop it. They'd give you a look that says very clearly, "Why exactly did we bring you?" Back at camp, the work continues. Food doesn't magically turn into a neat steak. It has to be butchered with stone tools that are sharp but awkward, requiring skill to handle without cutting yourself. And trust me, you would cut yourself. Everyone does at first. A small nick in modern times is nothing. In prehistoric times, it could get infected. One tiny wound could become a swollen, festering problem that ruins your mobility and risks your life. No Band-Aids, no disinfectant, no antibiotics, just grit and hope. If you think you might take a break from hunting, maybe try gathering instead. Good news, it's easier, but only physically. Mentally, it's a minefield. Prehistoric gatherers needed astonishing knowledge, not just berries good, random mushroom bad. It was more like mushroom A will feed you, mushroom B will kill you, mushroom C will kill you slowly, mushroom D will kill you after hallucinations, mushroom E is fine only in winter, and mushroom F is edible but tastes like sadness. Plants were equally tricky. You can't guess your way through the prehistoric pantry. One wrong bite and you're done. You'd walk for hours scanning the ground, unsure what you're even looking for. Meanwhile, the others forage confidently, picking what they know, leaving behind what they don't. They might not say anything, but they'd notice how little you contribute. Food was shared, but effort mattered. A person who couldn't gather or hunt enough added strain on the group. Too much strain, and someone might eventually decide you're more trouble than you're worth. Water was another problem you'd quickly run into. You can't just drink any river or stream you find. Some were safe, others filled with bacteria, parasites, or animal waste. Modern stomachs aren't prepared for that assault. One drink from the wrong spot, and you'd spend the rest of the day curled on the ground, dehydrated, weak, and vulnerable. And while you suffer, no one is going to hold your hair and comfort you. They'll give you space, because illness spreads, and the group's survival always outweighs the individual's. And let's not forget the environment itself. Heat, cold, humidity, sun exposure, bugs, biting flies, ticks, mosquitoes, tiny creatures that could ruin your day and your health. You couldn't shoo them away. You couldn't cover yourself in repellent. They'd swarm you because you're soft, you're unaccustomed, and you smell different. Your skin would welt up in angry red bumps within minutes, and scratching only made it worse. Meanwhile, prehistoric people barely reacted. Their bodies had adapted. Yours hasn't. Shelter wasn't guaranteed either. Maybe your group used caves. Maybe they built simple huts. Whatever the case, contributing to shelter meant hauling heavy materials, weaving branches, scraping hides, or maintaining fires. Fire itself was precious. If you let it go out, you didn't just lose warmth, you lost safety. Fire kept predators away. It cooked food. It hardened spear tips. Losing it was a disaster, and if the group trusted you with tending it, there's a 100% chance you'd accidentally smother the flames or walk away at the wrong moment. But the biggest challenge of all wasn't physical, it was social. Prehistoric groups were tightly knit, held together by cooperation, trust, and shared survival. You, the outsider from the future, didn't know their customs. You didn't understand their gestures. You didn't know when silence was required, or when a certain gesture meant danger. Communication wasn't always verbal. A glance or a hand signal could mean the difference between stay close and run now. One misunderstanding in the wrong moment could get you, or someone else, hurt. If you tried talking too much, asking questions, or making suggestions, they might see you as disruptive. If you sat quietly and did nothing, they might see you as lazy. Social dynamics were subtle, and fitting in was essential. Prehistoric humans didn't have the luxury of supporting someone who slowed cooperation. You had to become useful, fast. By midday, you'd be exhausted, every muscle aching, every limb sore. You'd crave rest, but rest wasn't part of the schedule. There were hides to scrape, wood to chop, stones to gather, tools to sharpen. Every task required skill, and you didn't have any. By sunset, the group would be settling in, dividing food based on contribution and need. They'd eat quickly, instinctively aware that darkness carried its own set of dangers. You'd eat too, if you earned it. If not, you'd get the scraps. Hunger would settle into your bones again. Cold would creep across your skin. And all the while, you'd feel the pressure of the truth. You weren't built for this world. It wasn't just the danger. It wasn't just the labor. It was everything. Every moment, every breath, every hour needing awareness, resilience, and instinct. Surviving a day in prehistoric times required a strength modern humans rarely use, a sharpness we've long forgotten, and a connection to the natural world we've lost. You wouldn't last, because this world demanded everything from you: your mind, your body, your senses, and your spirit. And even then, it might not be enough. If you woke up in prehistoric times and thought the worst thing you'd face in a single day was hunger, you'd be disastrously wrong. Hunger was only one voice in a loud, hostile choir. The world wasn't designed for comfort back then. It wasn't even designed for survival. It was designed for conflict. Constant, grinding conflict between early humans and the enormous, unpredictable world around them. And every step you took would remind you that you were not the apex predator. You were just another animal with soft skin, slow legs, and a distressing lack of claws. Imagine starting your day before dawn, not because you wanted to, but because the night was too dangerous to sleep deeply. The darkness wasn't peaceful. It was alive. Every rustle, every snap of a twig, every low rumble of wind in the trees could be a predator approaching, or your imagination building something scarier from nothing. You'd sleep in short bursts, always half awake, because the people who slept too deeply were the ones dragged away silently and never seen again. When the sky finally shifted from black to bluish gray, everyone around you would stir, stiff from cold and lack of rest. Fires didn't burn all night. Wood was a precious resource, and flames attracted as many predators as they scared away. So mornings began with shivering, tense shoulders, and silent counting of the people around you. Someone was always missing. Maybe they wandered off. Maybe something took them. No one waited around to find out. You wouldn't get breakfast, not unless you brought something down the night before or you found something edible lying around. Food was not scheduled. There were no meals. There was only eating when possible and going hungry the rest of the time. And prehistoric hunger was a sharp, painful thing. It wasn't the mild inconvenience you recognize from skipping lunch. It was a constant, gnawing awareness that your energy was leaking away faster than you could replace it. Your stomach would complain while your group prepared to move. Prehistoric people were always moving. Staying in one place too long meant draining the local plants, attracting predators, or inviting neighboring groups to attack. Territory wasn't a line on a map. It was a living space that shifted constantly. You had to move with it or die in it. Walking wasn't just walking. It was a brutal marathon across uneven ground, rocks that sliced open feet, thorny plants that hid sharp spines, and mud that could swallow a leg. Modern shoes would have failed in minutes. Your unprepared feet would fail sooner. Blisters would form, then burst, then bleed. But stopping wasn't an option. The group didn't halt because one person was suffering. The group moved at the pace needed to stay alive. And then came the insects. You might think you've been bitten by bugs before, but prehistoric insects were relentless. They were bigger, hungrier, and far more numerous. Swarms would descend on exposed skin, leaving raised welts that itched and burned. Some carried diseases. Some caused infections. Some simply made the day 10 times more miserable. You'd swat until your arms ached. And the moment you slowed down, they'd swarm again. As the day heated up, you'd start shedding whatever furs or hides you had wrapped around yourself overnight. But even without clothes weighing you down, the heat would hit you like a physical force. Prehistoric climate wasn't consistent or forgiving. Some regions were scorching, others were unpredictable. Hot one moment, cold the next. You could easily overheat. Water wasn't clean or abundant, and dehydration struck fast. If you passed a stream, you couldn't just drink freely. Animals used it, predators waded near it, parasites lived in it. Water had to be checked, tasted, filtered through whatever crude method your group knew. And you had to hope you didn't swallow anything that would kill you slowly from the inside. While walking, you'd constantly scan your surroundings, not because you were particularly observant, but because everyone else did it and you copied them to survive. A flash of movement in the bushes could mean a small animal, or it could mean a predator testing your group. Early humans weren't invincible. Saber-toothed cats, giant hyenas, dire wolves, they all stalked humans the way humans stalked prey. You'd hear low growls that seemed to vibrate inside your bones. Sometimes those growls would follow you for miles. And then there were other humans, people like you, same species, same needs, same fears, but a different group. And different groups meant trouble. Cooperation was rare, resources were scarce, outsiders were threats. If your group spotted another group nearby, you wouldn't wave or greet them, you'd freeze, you'd hide. You'd grip sharpened stones like weapons. You'd prepare for a fight, even if you desperately didn't want one. Because prehistoric conflict didn't start with a warning. It started with someone rushing toward you, screaming, swinging a crude club. But the day wasn't only danger and movement. At some point, food had to be found. Hunting was risky and exhausting, and you weren't built for it. You'd struggle to keep up. Running through brush, ducking under branches, slipping on dirt, nearly twisting ankles, it was chaos. Hunters of the time relied on persistence, chasing prey until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. You would collapse long before the animal did. Your lungs would burn, your legs would shake, sweat would blind you. And when you couldn't keep up, you'd fall behind and pray nothing smelled your weakness. Gathering might seem easier. It wasn't. Every plant had to be identified, and one wrong leaf could mean agony or death. You'd reach for berries, and someone would slap your hand away with a sharp hiss. Wrong berries. The right ones were further up the hill. The wrong ones triggered vomiting, hallucinations, seizures, or attracted animals because the smell of your sick body carried far. Once food was finally found, a small animal, a cluster of edible roots, a lucky find of honey, the group would eat quickly and quietly. Food was never enough. Sharing kept peace, but no one ate until they were full. Hunger lingered like a shadow, an uninvited companion. The afternoon would drag on endlessly. Time felt longer without clocks, without schedules, without any guarantee that the day would end peacefully. Every hour brought new problems. Someone twisted an ankle. Someone started coughing. Someone fell behind. Someone cried because they were too tired to continue. But emotions weren't luxuries prehistoric life allowed. Crying made noise. Noise attracted predators. So you'd swallow your feelings just like everyone else. As the sky dimmed, the group would search for a place to rest. Not camp, not a spot with shelter. Just a place with fewer threats than the surrounding area. A cluster of rocks. An area with fewer trees. A section of ground that didn't smell too strongly of big cats. Fires were built small to reduce attention. People huddled close because body heat meant survival. You'd sit there, shaking from exhaustion, dirt caked into your skin, scratches burning on your arms and legs, your stomach half empty, and your nerves beyond frayed. Your body would ache in places you didn't know existed. Your mind would be foggy from stress and fear, and you'd understand something people rarely think about today. Prehistoric life wasn't just hard, it was relentless. The world didn't give breaks. It didn't reward effort. It didn't care if you were smart or kind or determined. It only cared whether you were strong enough, fast enough, quiet enough, and lucky enough to make it through another day. You'd curl up near the fire, wrapped in whatever furs were available, listening to the hiss and crackle. You'd hear distant animal calls, low, mournful, terrifying. You'd feel something move in the dark, just out of sight. You'd grip a stone or a stick, knowing it wouldn't help much if something big lunged at you. And you'd try to sleep anyway, because dawn was coming, and with it, everything all over again. And that was just one day. If you ever thought surviving prehistoric times was simply about avoiding predators, think again. One of the most unforgiving enemies of early humans wasn't a beast with fangs or claws, it was the land itself. The terrain of prehistoric Earth behaved like one enormous obstacle course, specifically designed to break bones, snap ankles, and test your patience long before nature even bothered sending a saber-toothed tiger after you. And unlike the dangers that roared or stalked you, the land didn't warn you. It didn't hiss, growl, or leave suspicious tracks. It simply waited for you to take one wrong step. Imagine waking up at dawn on a prehistoric morning. There is no cozy forest path, no cleared field, no helpful arrow-shaped sign saying, "Easy route this way." Instead, the world spreads out as an unfiltered mixture of tangled underbrush, thorny plants, slick moss, mud pits, boulder fields, and sudden cliffs hidden behind foliage that looks soft but acts like a trap. Moving even 20 meters is an adventure. Modern hiking trails have spoiled you. Out here, witnessing the horizon means nothing because the next half meter might chew you up before you ever make it that far. Every step must be deliberate. You plant your foot and hope the ground is stable. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. Prehistoric landscapes were as unpredictable as the weather. Waterlogged soil can swallow your foot up to the knee. Jagged volcanic rock slices your soles if you walk barefoot, which you probably are because prehistoric people didn't exactly have a Nike store to run to. Even the grass isn't innocent. Some species hide sharp edges that can cut skin open like tiny knives. Early humans learned this the hard way, developing calluses thicker than leather. But you? After 10 minutes, you'd be limping. Then there's the vegetation. Trees don't grow politely spaced apart. Branches whip your face. Vines snag your ankles. Roots curl across the surface like ancient booby traps. Many prehistoric plants evolved to survive herbivores by developing thorns so vicious they make barbed wire look friendly. Brush thick enough to slow down a mammoth can stop you dead. You fight your way through it, scratching your arms, ripping your clothing, and leaving behind a trail that tells every carnivore exactly where you went. Congratulations, you're not just injured, you're now a glowing neon sign for predators. And if you try to travel across open ground, that isn't safer either. Large plains look benign from a distance, but prehistoric plains were riddled with burrows, holes, and uneven patches. Step wrong, twist your ankle, and suddenly you're lying helpless on your back, listening for anything that might sniff you out. Early humans had the advantage of growing up in this brutal playground, developing balance, reflexes, and toughness from childhood. You did not. Your body is used to sidewalks and soft gym mats. You're built for comfort, not chaos. Prehistoric children outran predators by age 6. You can barely outrun your neighbor's dog. Rivers and lakes, which you might think of as refreshing or peaceful, were far from friendly. Riverbanks collapsed unexpectedly. Mud turned to quicksand. Algae slicked rocks until they became deadly traps. Falling into a prehistoric river wasn't just unpleasant, it was life-threatening. Strong currents dragged you under. Water temperatures were shockingly cold. And unseen below the surface lurked prehistoric crocodiles, giant fish with teeth like daggers, or simply sharp rocks waiting to smash your skull. Even drinking from a river required caution because waterborne parasites were everywhere, and the people who survived long enough to reproduce usually had some level of resistance. You do not. Climbing anything in prehistoric times was another gamble. Hills were steep, rocks crumbled. Fallen logs weren't stable bridges. They were wet, rotting, and filled with insects that could bite into your skin. You try crossing one and end up slipping, falling into more thorn-covered vegetation, and adding fresh wounds to your already overworked body. Those wounds don't heal quickly either. Mud, bacteria, fungi, everything wants to infect you. In prehistoric times, even a tiny cut could become a slow, painful threat. Survival didn't just require strength, it required constant awareness. Traveling at night? Definitely not. Darkness swallowed everything. No electric lights, no moonlight guaranteed. Entire continents experienced pitch-black nights, especially under heavy cloud cover. And the sounds? Howls, rustling leaves, branches snapping, reminded you that the predators lurking nearby loved the dark. Prehistoric humans avoided night travel because stumbling over a root or falling into a ditch wasn't just inconvenient, it was fatal. You stay awake, terrified, unsure whether the next sound is wind or something sniffing you from the shadows. And let's not forget weather. Rain turned pathways into sludge pits. Wind snapped branches and sent them crashing down. Lightning struck trees, starting sudden fires. Heat waves drained you of energy. And without modern hydration habits, you might not even realize you're dying of dehydration until you collapse. Cold snapped your fingers numb and turned rocky terrain into slippery, frost-covered traps. Even fog was dangerous. Imagine trying to navigate an already unfamiliar landscape when visibility drops to 0. Prehistoric fog created illusions, distorted distances, hid hazards, and sometimes forced entire groups to wait for hours just to avoid walking blind into danger. Your sense of direction is another problem. Today, you rely on maps, signs, and GPS. In prehistoric times, early humans depended on an internal mental map built through years of experience. You would get lost within minutes. Every tree looks the same. Every rock blends with the others, and the forest doesn't care about your confusion. Lose your path, and you're as good as gone. You might wander aimlessly until night falls, predators emerge, or exhaustion sets in. Your chances of finding your original camp? Almost zero. Even if you followed a group of prehistoric humans, people who know the landscape intimately, you wouldn't be able to keep up. They moved with speed, precision, and confidence you simply don't have. Their feet glide over roots you don't see. Their balance keeps them steady on rocks that send you tumbling. They duck under branches before you even notice them. They cross streams using stepping stones without slipping. They're practically dancing across terrain that feels like an assault course designed specifically to humiliate you. And because prehistoric life required constant travel, searching for food, water, shelter, and safe resting spots, you wouldn't have the luxury of stopping every 10 minutes to catch your breath or check your footing. Daily life demanded endurance, hours of walking, climbing, crouching, navigating, always alert, always wary. Prehistoric humans were conditioned to this from birth. You were conditioned to smooth floors and ergonomic chairs. By the time you've traveled a single mile, you're beaten, bleeding, dehydrated, exhausted, sunburned, and possibly carrying a dozen tiny injuries that could all lead to bigger problems. And you're still not safe. You've only survived the land, and that's before nature, predators, starvation, disease, weather, and other humans even enter the equation. Prehistoric life didn't just test your body, it tested your awareness every second. You weren't supposed to relax. The terrain itself hunted you in silence. And while early humans learned to navigate that world with skill and intuition, you, a modern visitor, would be overwhelmed before the day even began. Survival in prehistoric times wasn't about luck. It was about adapting to a world that constantly tried to break you. And for someone living in the comfort of the modern age, the land alone would be enough to finish you long before anything with teeth ever got close. If you've made it this far into prehistoric life, dodging predators, avoiding poisonous plants, staying warm through unpredictable nights, congratulations. But now you're entering one of the hardest parts of survival, dealing with the social world of early humans. Because contrary to the romantic image of a tight-knit tribe where everyone sings around the fire and helps each other hunt mammoths, prehistoric social life was complicated, fragile, and often downright brutal. And if you, with your modern manners and sense of personal space, think you're ready for that, well, you're not. Imagine waking up one morning on the edge of the camp. The sun isn't fully risen yet. The fire is only embers, and the air smells like smoke and wet earth. Around you, the tribe is already awake. Some tending the fire, others preparing tools, others stretching sore muscles after sleeping on the ground. That's your first shock of the day. Nobody has a private morning routine. No quiet coffee moment. No personal time. Life is shared, everything is communal, and the tribe expects you to move in sync with everyone else. If you stand there sleepily rubbing your eyes, someone will grunt at you to get moving. If you wander off by yourself, people will assume something is wrong. Privacy simply doesn't exist. You live together, eat together, work together, sleep close enough to hear each other breathe. But the lack of privacy isn't even the hard part. It's the unwritten rules. Rules you don't know, rules everyone else grew up with, rules that keep the group functioning. One wrong move and you'll offend someone, undermine the leader, or mark yourself as unreliable. In prehistory, social mistakes didn't just get you judged, they got you excluded. And exclusion was a slow-motion death sentence. The tribe you're with has a hierarchy, though not the kind you'd recognize. There isn't a king sitting on a throne or a council with official titles. Power is fluid, shifting between those who prove themselves most capable. A skilled hunter might hold influence, but so might a sharp-eyed gatherer who knows which plants heal and which kill. The elder who tells the tribe's stories holds power too, because knowledge is as valuable as muscle. You don't hold any of that power. You arrived with no skills, no contributions, and absolutely no background in surviving off the land. But to the tribe, that isn't cute or relatable. It's dangerous. A weak link can slow a group down, attract predators, or waste valuable resources. So from the moment you join the group, you're being watched. Your behavior, your work ethic, your reactions to stress. The tribe is evaluating you constantly. This morning, for example, the hunters are preparing to set out. They carve sharp points onto spears, check the sinew bindings on their tools, and discuss the plan using a mixture of gestures, grunts, and sparse words. You don't fully understand, but you try to mimic their seriousness. That's mistake number 1. Mimicking without understanding looks ridiculous, and the oldest hunter gives you a long, unimpressed stare. In their world, pretending to know something is worse than admitting you don't. Confidence without skill risks the whole group. Then comes mistake number 2. While helping gather wood for the morning fire, you spot 2 women gathering roots a short distance away. You eagerly approach to help, thinking you're being useful. But you don't know that this particular root is dangerous to harvest unless you're trained to identify the safe ones. You crouch down, ready to dig, and both women immediately jump up and bark at you sharply, one grabbing your wrist, the other pushing you away. You nearly poisoned the group without realizing it. Their anger is not polite or patient. They scold you with fierce gestures, loud frustration, and quick movements that make your heart race. In prehistoric life, gentle explanations are a luxury. Mistakes like yours could kill half the tribe. Your confidence drops. You back away, embarrassed. But embarrassment isn't a feeling the tribe has time to process. What they see is a problem. Someone who tries to help but doesn't understand enough to truly contribute. And in a world where everyone must earn their place every single day, this is a dangerous reputation. Social status here isn't fixed. It changes constantly. If you contribute something valuable, food, protection, information, you gain acceptance. If you fail to contribute or cost the group time, food, or safety, your standing drops. It only takes a few mistakes for the tribe to start excluding you from important activities. They won't banish you outright, because that also hurts the group, but they might give you smaller tasks, less food, or less help. You'd be allowed to exist, but not really belong. In a modern context, this might feel like being ignored or pushed away. In prehistoric context, it means slow starvation. Later in the day, the tribe gathers for an important ritual. What kind of ritual isn't clear to you? Maybe honoring a recent hunt, maybe preparing for a journey, maybe remembering an ancestor. Rituals are serious business. They strengthen bonds, reinforce roles, and give meaning to a dangerous world. You, of course, have no idea what's going on. Everyone stands in a circle, and you follow along, trying not to look out of place. But you accidentally step forward at the wrong moment, interrupting the rhythm of the group's movement. A ripple of irritation passes through the circle. You've disrupted something sacred without understanding why. Ritual mistakes aren't just awkward, they're deeply offensive. In this tribe, rituals connect them to the spirits of the animals they hunt, the land they protect, and the ancestors who guide them. Someone who disrupts this is seen as careless or even spiritually dangerous. The tribe doesn't necessarily believe you meant harm, but intention doesn't matter. Actions do. After the ritual, you notice fewer people look at you. Conversations happen around you, but nobody includes you. You've become a silent weight on the group. The tribe isn't cruel, they just can't afford a liability. As night falls, the temperature drops sharply. The tribe gathers around the fire to share cooked meat and warm themselves. Normally, warmth is shared, bodies close together to trap heat. But tonight, you find yourself slightly outside the circle. Not cast out, but not pulled in. You get a smaller portion of food, and nobody insists you take more. In their view, they're being fair. Food goes to the strongest contributors first. If any remains, the rest share what little is left. You eat slowly, feeling every stare, every whisper. You try to speak, maybe to explain yourself, maybe to apologize, but language is limited here. Even if you spoke the prehistoric tongue fluently, the tribe values action far more than words. Apologies don't fix broken tools or refill food stores. Effort does. As you sit awkwardly at the edge of the firelight, it finally hits you. You're failing not because the tribe dislikes you, but because prehistoric social life requires instincts you simply don't have. It's fast, unforgiving, and built on survival, not comfort. You're used to polite misunderstandings, second chances, and gentle corrections. These people live in a world where mistakes kill, where the group must function like a single organism. Anyone who disrupts that rhythm, even accidentally, is treated with suspicion. And the harsh truth? In their world, the tribe isn't wrong. You are a risk. If you want to survive, you must prove yourself. You must learn quickly, contribute meaningfully, and adapt to a social environment that doesn't slow down for your feelings or confusion. But right now, at this moment, with the fire crackling softly and the tribe settling into the familiar closeness you aren't included in, you realize just how fragile your position is. Surviving the wilderness is one thing, but surviving people? That might be the hardest part of all. You wake up on a chilly, prehistoric morning with the sun barely pushing over the horizon, and before you even sit up, you're already in danger. The air is crisp, yes, but it's also carrying the unmistakable scent of something large, something hungry, and something that has absolutely no problem making a snack out of you. Survival in prehistoric times isn't just about avoiding being eaten or trying not to freeze. It's also about the everyday battles you never even think about. Battles against insects, parasites, sickness, infections, and your own fragile human body. And if you thought predators were the worst threat, think again. Your greatest enemy is often far, far smaller. You haven't even taken your first step before you feel it. The ground is uneven, littered with jagged stones, branches, and roots. There are no shoes. People living in prehistoric times didn't have the luxury of cushioned soles, supportive arches, or anything remotely resembling modern footwear. Their shoes, if you can call them that, were usually bits of hide tied around their feet. You, on the other hand, are barefoot, and it only takes one unlucky step for all your problems to begin. You place your weight on a sharp stone hidden under a layer of moss. The pain shoots up your leg instantly, and when you lift your foot, you see that you've split the skin open. It's a tiny wound, just a cut, the kind of thing that, in the modern world, you'd wash under clean running water, maybe cover with a bandage, and forget about in an hour. But here, this tiny cut is practically a death sentence waiting to happen. There is no clean water. The cut remains open as you limp to the nearest river, if it even counts as a river, and dip your foot in murky, bacteria-filled water. The sting makes you wince, but the real danger is invisible. Every drop is a soup of microorganisms that thrive in the warm, nutrient-rich environment of your fresh wound. You don't know it yet, but infection begins almost immediately. You shake your foot dry as best you can and move on. The tribe you've been following is already on the move, and nobody is going to wait for you. Prehistoric life is harsh, and while people cared about each other, survival comes first. If someone slows the group down, it's a threat to everyone. Predators follow the weak. Illness spreads fast. If you fall behind, you may as well start digging your own grave. Your injured foot throbs with every step, but you force yourself to keep going. Pain is normal here. No one is going to pity you. Everyone is already hurting from something: a healed bone that never set properly, a missing finger, a jagged scar from a hunt that went wrong, toothaches that never ended, headaches from smoke-filled shelters. Everyone carries suffering like it's just another tool. As the sun climbs higher, insects begin to wake up. Flies swarm around the wound on your foot, buzzing eagerly. They're not just annoying, they're laying eggs. If they get inside your cut, you're dealing with maggots. That's not something you ever want. Mosquitoes join the party, and these aren't your everyday suburban backyard mosquitoes. These prehistoric relatives are bigger, more aggressive, and carriers of parasites. Malaria, dengue-like fevers, and all sorts of diseases spread easily. One bite could put you into a feverish haze that you never recover from. As you swat them away, you barely notice the smaller creatures crawling on your skin: ticks, lice, and fleas. But you notice them eventually because their bites itch fiercely. Scratching feels good for a second, but it tears your skin, creating even more entry points for infection. You stop to rub your arm, noticing red bumps already forming. By the end of the day, your entire body will feel like a battleground. Parasites don't give you breaks. They don't care that you're tired. They're here to feed. Your foot hurts more now. The swelling has begun, and with every passing hour, the infection spreads deeper. There are no antibiotics, no ointments. The best treatment prehistoric people had was maybe herbal paste made by the tribe's healer, if the healer felt that using valuable plants on you wasn't a waste. These plants needed to be gathered, dried, and stored, and nobody is going to waste rare medicine on someone who can't yet contribute to the group. You're not a hunter. You're not a gatherer. You're not a child or an elder. You're just extra. You limp along as the tribe stops near a rocky outcrop. It's time to forage. Everyone spreads out, looking for edible plants, nuts, roots, and berries. And this is where another danger begins, one that you're not prepared for at all. Everything looks edible when you're starving. You see bright berries that look delicious. You're about to grab a handful when a woman rushes over and smacks your hand away. She doesn't speak your language, but the message is clear. Don't touch that. A single berry from that plant could shut down your organs. prehistoric people lived by knowing what was safe and what would kill them. You know none of that. You're a walking liability. You follow them to a patch of roots. They dig with sharpened sticks, pulling out thick tubers. You try to help, but your digging stick snaps. Your hands, soft from modern life, blister instantly. By midday, you have open sores across your palms. Dirt gets in, and like your foot wound, these too become infected. Every tiny opening in your skin is another entry point for illness. Your body isn't used to surviving. It's used to comfort. The group moves again, heading toward a cave for shelter. As they gather around the fire, your stomach growls loudly. You haven't eaten more than a few scraps since morning, and no one is offering you anything. Prehistoric people had food scarcity burned into their DNA. Sharing was done carefully. Food meant survival, and giving it to someone who might not make it to the next day wasn't good math. The healer finally approaches you, looking at your swollen foot. She uses a sharp stone to scrape away the infected skin, and the pain makes your vision blur. She packs the wound with crushed leaves and ash. It burns. Your entire leg throbs. The dressing is held in place with animal sinew. If it works, you might survive. If it doesn't, the infection will continue spreading into your bloodstream until you go into septic shock. You try to sleep, but the ground is cold and unforgiving. With no blanket, you curl into yourself. You can hear distant howls. Wolves, maybe. A large predator roaring far in the forest. Every shadow in the cave entrance feels like a threat. Fire crackles, but even the fire is dangerous. Too close, and you blister. Too far, and you freeze. You wake up shivering. Your body aches in every joint. Your foot is pulsing with heat, fever. You're officially in trouble. In prehistoric times, fever was terrifying. There was no understanding of bacteria, viruses, or infections. People only knew that sometimes the body got hot and weak, and sometimes the person survived, and sometimes they died. You try to sit up, but dizziness washes over you. Hunger gnaws at your stomach. Thirst dries your throat until swallowing hurts. The healer places a bitter plant in your hand. You chew it, gagging at the taste. It may help reduce the fever a bit, but it's not a cure. Outside the cave, the sun is rising again. Another day of hardship begins for everyone, but for you, it may be your last. Your wounds worsen, your fever climbs, your strength drains away with every hour, and as much as the tribe might pity you, they can't afford to carry anyone who can't walk. Survival is a brutal equation, and right now, you're the variable that doesn't fit. Would you recover? Possibly, but chances are you wouldn't. Because in prehistoric times, your biggest threat wasn't a predator or starvation or the cold. It was everything working together. Every insect, every wound, every bite, every germ, every hardship, stacking up until your body simply couldn't keep fighting. And that's why you wouldn't last long. You wake before the sun has even begun to stain the horizon, dragged from sleep by a sound that doesn't belong to dreams. It's the low, steady grumble of the earth itself, an uneasiness in the ground that rattles through your bones. At first, you don't know what it is. Prehistoric life has already taught you that every noise is either a warning or a countdown, but this one feels different. It isn't the snort of a predator, not the crack of branches under something heavy, not even the distant cry of a rival clan. This is deeper, older, more ancient than anything alive around you. The shaking stops as quickly as it begins, leaving the air still and the forest quiet. Too quiet. Even the insects hesitate, as if they're waiting for something else, something worse. You sit up slowly, your bedding of leaves and grass sticking to your skin, and your first instinct is the same as any human of this era. Sniff the air. Smell often gives you more information than sight. And right now, the air tastes wrong, dry, dusty, heavy with the scent of stone, as though the entire world has been ground between two massive hands. You almost don't notice the beast approaching behind you until the wind shifts again. A faint musk reaches you, warm, earthy, tinged with wildness. Your body stiffens even before you fully register it. Something large is moving. You turn your head, just a fraction, careful not to make sudden movements. That's when you see it through the trees. A massive shape, hulking, shaggy, and unmistakable. A prehistoric bison, easily twice the size of modern ones. A walking wall of muscle and horn. Had it charged first, you wouldn't have survived the second. But luck is the only reason it hasn't noticed you yet. It flicks an ear, snorts, and lowers its head to graze, tail swishing lazily through the morning air. The urge to stand, to flee, to sprint as fast as your legs can carry you pulses through your limbs. But that would be suicide. Running triggers instinct, prehistoric instinct, and everything out here is programmed to chase movement. So you do what the early humans learned to do. Freeze. Become part of the landscape. You slow your breath until each inhale feels like it takes minutes. You wait, and slowly, painfully slowly, the bison wanders off, tail flicking, hooves drumming the soil. It disappears into the tree line as silently as something that large can, leaving you trembling but alive. But the relief doesn't last. A new sound emerges, closer, sharper, predatory. A rasping growl, low and guttural. When you turn your head again, you finally understand what the bison was avoiding. A pack of dire wolves slinks between the trees. Not wolves as you know them today, but larger, heavier, built for a world where everything is dangerous. Their eyes glint yellow in the dim light. Their noses twitch as they pick up the lingering scent of the bison. And then, unfortunately, the scent of you. One of them stares at you. You stare back. Its hackles rise in slow motion. This time, freezing won't save you. Your best chance is elevation. You bolt, not toward the open forest where they can outpace you, but toward the nearest climbable tree. Your feet thud across the ground, slipping on loose dirt, grabbing whatever roots your hands can find. The wolves explode into motion behind you, snarling, their paws pounding like drum beats. You leap, catch a low branch, and pull yourself up with a strength born from pure terror. Your fingers scream, your legs burn, but you climb higher, higher, until you're out of reach. The wolves gather below, pacing, testing the trunk with their claws, their jaws clicking in frustration. You cling to the tree long after they lose interest and melt back into the forest. Only then do you realize how badly you're shaking. Danger comes so fast in this world that you barely process one death before another is waiting. When you finally descend, the sun has risen fully, bathing the world in a thick, humid glow. Your stomach growls loudly enough to attract predators again, so you set off to forage. but the ground you walk on feels uneven, still trembling slightly. A reminder, a warning. The quake wasn't a random event, and the earth is not finished. As you move through the forest, you start noticing the signs. Birds abandoning entire groves, rodents scurrying away in frantic patterns, the distant stream running cloudy with disturbed sediment. Prehistoric humans understood the earth the way modern humans understand weather apps. When the ground muttered like this, something catastrophic was approaching. You make your way to higher ground. From a ridge, you finally see it. A distant plume of dust rising like smoke. Trees falling like matchsticks. A landslide, massive, unstoppable, reshaping the land as if the forest were made of paper. The rumble reaches you moments later, a bone-deep roar that silences everything else. You watch as entire sections of the landscape vanish under tons of rock and debris. Anything living in that path didn't stand a chance. And that's when another problem hits you, one you hadn't considered. Your water source is gone, buried, redirected, trapped under the slide. Without water, you won't last long. Prehistoric life is brutal not because of predators alone, but because survival is a constant scavenger hunt. Every resource disappears eventually. Thirst drives you onward. Hours pass. The heat presses down on you like a physical weight. Your head aches. Your tongue sticks to the roof of your mouth. When you finally find a puddle caught in a rock depression, you almost fall to your knees in relief, until you notice something floating in it. Fur. A dead rodent, bloated. You hesitate, but dehydration steals your judgment. You cup the water in your hands and drink anyway. It tastes foul, metallic, wrong, but your body craves it so desperately that you ignore every instinct telling you to stop. Illness hits fast in this world. You start sweating, then shivering despite the heat, your stomach cramps, your vision blurs. You stumble through the forest in a daze, barely aware of where you're going or what dangers are waiting. Parasites, bacteria, toxins. These were the invisible predators that claimed more lives than saber-tooths and cave bears combined. At some point, you trip and fall. You lie there in the dirt, too weak to move, listening to the distant calls of creatures that would gladly finish you. The sky overhead spins in slow circles. The world smells of soil and moss and decay. When you finally regain enough strength to crawl to safety, night is already falling. Darkness brings new predators, new fears, new reasons to hide. You press yourself into a hollow beneath a fallen log, shaking uncontrollably, praying that nothing finds you before dawn. Prehistoric nights are cruel, long, filled with noises that remind you just how fragile you are. And as you drift in and out of a fevered sleep, you realize the most terrifying truth of all. You haven't even survived a full day yet. The prehistoric world is relentless, not out of malice, but because it simply doesn't care. Everything is stronger, faster, more adapted than you. And you're just another fragile piece of meat tossed into the wild. But the night isn't over yet, and the world hasn't finished testing you. Survival in prehistoric times was not just about avoiding predators or finding food. It was an unending series of physical and mental challenges, each one testing the limits of the human body and mind. By the time a day in the wild had fully begun, you would already be pushed to the edge. Every action required effort, every decision mattered. and even the slightest mistake could be fatal. The world was harsh, unpredictable, and entirely unsympathetic, and humans had to adapt constantly or perish. You quickly realize that what seems like simple tasks today, walking through a forest, crossing a river, or gathering food, were fraught with peril and complexity. Imagine waking up on a cold, damp morning with no shelter except perhaps a few branches hastily arranged and leaves for warmth. The air is sharp, biting, and filled with unfamiliar scents, some of them warnings. The musk of nearby predators, the acrid stench of decaying carcasses, or the tang of poisonous plants. Every sound is amplified. A snapping twig could signal a stalking predator. A distant roar might indicate a lion or a bear, and even the rustle of your own movements can betray your presence. Survival demanded acute awareness, a constant scanning of the environment, and the ability to respond instantly. Hesitation could be deadly. Food was never guaranteed. Unlike today, where supermarkets and fast food are minutes away, prehistoric people spent most of their time hunting, foraging, or scavenging. You would need to identify edible plants correctly, distinguish safe berries from toxic ones, and recognize roots that could sustain life rather than harm it. Every bite carried risk. Mistakes could lead to illness or death, and even when you were successful, calories were precious and never abundant. Hunting required strength, strategy, and cooperation. Tracking prey meant reading subtle signs, footprints, broken branches, or disturbed vegetation. Even with skill, success was uncertain, and the consequences of failure were immediate hunger or energy depletion. Shelter was essential but difficult to secure. Exposure to the elements, whether it was rain, snow, or blistering sun, could quickly weaken the body. Primitive shelters offered little protection against harsh weather or the bites of insects and smaller predators. You would need to gather materials, improvise structures, and find a safe location, all while balancing the need for concealment from both predators and rival human groups. Survival was not just a physical test, but a logistical one, requiring constant problem-solving and foresight. Water, too, was a challenge. Access to clean water could mean the difference between life and disease. Rivers, lakes, and streams might look safe, but they were often contaminated with parasites or carried predators lurking beneath the surface. Even a small misjudgment, drinking from stagnant water or approaching too close to an ambush site, could result in illness or death. Every step involved a calculation of risk versus reward, and the cost of error was immediate and severe. The social aspect of survival was equally crucial. Humans in prehistoric times relied on cooperation and communication, yet trust was never absolute. Rival groups could attack, scavenging parties could steal supplies, and even allies could become sources of danger if resources were scarce. Cooperation was necessary for hunting large game, building shelters, and defending against predators, but it required constant vigilance, negotiation, and social intelligence. Failure to navigate these social dynamics could leave you isolated and exposed to every threat. Predators were everywhere. Large carnivores such as saber-toothed cats, wolves, and hyenas posed constant threats, as did venomous snakes and smaller but deadly insects. Unlike modern humans, you had no protective clothing, no firearms, and no fortified shelters.
Defense relied on speed, strategy, and sometimes luck. Even minor injuries could become fatal due to infection, blood loss, or inability to hunt and forage effectively. Every encounter with wildlife demanded quick thinking, physical readiness, and a deep understanding of animal behavior. Your body would be under relentless strain.
Endless hours of walking, running, lifting, and climbing demanded stamina and endurance. Hunger, thirst, exposure, and constant vigilance combined to wear down even the strongest individuals. Fatigue was not a minor inconvenience, it was life-threatening. Mental alertness had to be maintained despite exhaustion because a single lapse could result in injury or death. Sleep, while necessary, was often unsafe, and even moments of rest required careful positioning to avoid predators or environmental hazards. The smallest mistakes could cascade into disaster. Eating the wrong plant, misjudging the approach of a predator, ignoring signs of weather change, or even falling asleep in the wrong spot could be fatal. Survival was a series of high-stakes decisions, each dependent on knowledge, skill, and physical capacity. The environment rewarded vigilance and punished errors immediately. By the time night fell, survival was not complete. It had merely reached a temporary pause. Darkness brought new challenges: nocturnal predators, disorientation, and the chill of dropping temperatures. Without fire or protective shelters, night could be lethal. The mind remained alert, the body tense, and every sound magnified. Sleep, when it came, was never deep, never truly restful. In prehistoric times, humans lived on the edge of existence, constantly balancing risk and reward. Every action had a consequence. Every mistake could be deadly, and every day required resilience, intelligence, and physical endurance. Hunger, predators, illness, and exposure were unrelenting forces, and survival was never guaranteed. One would quickly realize that what we consider minor inconveniences today were matters of life and death in the prehistoric world. Survival in this era was not heroic or glamorous. It was raw, exhausting, and utterly unforgiving. Even the most skilled, strongest, and clever individuals would struggle to last a day, let alone weeks or months. The prehistoric world demanded constant awareness, adaptability, and a profound respect for forces far greater than human capability. By the end of just one day, your body would ache, your mind would be exhausted, and the relentless challenges of hunger, exposure, and danger would weigh heavily on you. The prehistoric environment offered no pause, no comfort, and no guarantee. Survival was not simply about living. It was about navigating an unforgiving world with vigilance, strength, and endless endurance. To last a day in prehistoric times was a victory, a fleeting, hard-earned triumph against a world designed to test every aspect of human existence. By the time you reach the 9th hour of survival in prehistoric times, it becomes glaringly clear that the world is not just physically demanding, it is a predator's playground. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, and every distant growl could mean life or death. The sheer unpredictability of animal behavior kept early humans in a constant state of vigilance, and the consequences of a single lapse were often fatal. Unlike the animals we see in modern zoos, these creatures were not contained or conditioned. They were wild, cunning, and capable of overpowering humans with terrifying ease.
Predators ranged in size, strength, and strategy. Saber-toothed cats, mammoth wolves, and large bears roamed the land, hunting to survive just as you were.
Their senses were finely tuned. Keen eyes in low light, acute hearing that picked up the faintest movements, and noses that could detect prey from great distances. Humans had none of the advantages of modern weapons, protective clothing, or fortified shelters. If an apex predator set its sights on you, survival depended entirely on reaction speed, strategic thinking, and sometimes sheer luck. Even smaller predators were dangerous. Venomous snakes, aggressive hyenas, and packs of wild dogs posed threats that could be deadly in a matter of seconds. Insects and parasites, seemingly trivial by modern standards, were carriers of disease, infection, and irritation that could incapacitate a human over time. The environment was alive with danger on every level, and survival demanded constant observation and vigilance. Hunting, in theory, could be empowering. It meant access to food, and therefore calories for energy, but it was equally perilous. Prehistoric hunters had to track animals across challenging terrain, read subtle signs in the environment, and understand animal behavior deeply. Miscalculations could lead to injury or death. Even with weapons, such as sharpened stones, wooden spears, or traps, every hunt carried enormous risk. A misthrown spear could alert the prey and provoke a counterattack. Slipping on uneven terrain could leave you exposed. A wound sustained during the hunt could become fatal without immediate care. Hunting large game demanded collaboration, yet teamwork was no guarantee of safety. Group coordination required clear communication, trust, and timing, challenging to achieve in high-stress, dangerous situations. One panicked participant could ruin the plan, leaving everyone exposed to the prey's defensive tactics or nearby predators. Even with a successful kill, the aftermath posed challenges. Carrying or processing the carcass required physical strength, strategic planning, and protection from scavengers eager to steal the spoils. Scavenging was equally dangerous. Rotten carcasses might contain crucial nutrients, but they were teeming with bacteria, parasites, and other threats. Accessing such resources often required competing with other predators, including large carnivores and territorial scavengers. The risk-to-reward ratio was immense. A single misstep could result in infection, injury, or death. Survival was a constant balance between opportunity and peril, and one misjudgment could undo hours or even days of careful planning. Water sources were not safe havens either. Rivers, lakes, and streams attracted predators, from crocodiles in warmer regions to packs of wolves or large cats prowling the banks. Approaching water required stealth, speed, and acute awareness. Even drinking could be hazardous. Ingesting contaminated water could result in illness, while a misstep could place you directly in the path of a predator. Every action, even one as mundane as quenching thirst, was fraught with danger. Weather and terrain added to the hazards. Prehistoric humans navigated dense forests, rugged mountains, and open plains, each presenting unique challenges. Slippery rocks, thorny vegetation, and unstable ground increased the likelihood of injury. Exposure to extreme heat, cold, or storms compounded the risk of predators and disease. The environment itself was as much a threat as the animals that inhabited it, demanding constant vigilance, adaptation, and respect. The mental strain of facing predators continuously cannot be overstated. Anxiety, hypervigilance, and fear were constant companions, influencing decisions and draining energy. Early humans had to remain alert for hours, anticipating threats while performing physically demanding tasks such as hunting, gathering, or constructing shelters. The cognitive load was immense, and mistakes were often lethal. Even when a predator was avoided or successfully outmaneuvered, the encounter left lasting consequences. Scratches, bites, or injuries could fester without treatment, leading to infection, gangrene, or death. Fatigue from fleeing, evasion, or combat weakened the body's resilience, making it more susceptible to hunger, disease, and environmental hazards. Survival was rarely immediate. It was a constant accumulation of challenges that required stamina, skill, and careful management of energy. Predatory attacks were unpredictable. Some predators hunted alone, some in packs, and some used ambush tactics that were impossible to anticipate without experience and acute observation. A single misstep, a snapped twig, a misjudged shadow, or a moment of distraction could provoke an attack. For prehistoric humans, the line between life and death was razor thin, and vigilance was the only true defense. One remarkable adaptation was observation of predator behavior. Prehistoric humans learned to recognize signs of predatory activity: tracks, scratches on trees, overturned stones, or the calls of other animals. Learning these cues was essential for survival, yet it required constant attention and a willingness to interpret subtle environmental signals accurately. Misreading signs could be fatal. Children and the elderly were particularly vulnerable. Their physical limitations made evasion difficult, and their lack of experience made them easy targets for predators. Survival depended on the protection and cooperation of the stronger, more experienced members of the group. Without social support, even the most alert individual could fall victim to the dangers of prehistoric wildlife. Predators also influenced behavior in less direct ways. The presence of dangerous animals shaped movement patterns, foraging strategies, and even sleeping locations. Humans had to anticipate predator activity when selecting sites for rest or food gathering, constantly adjusting routines based on environmental conditions. Every decision had to account for the possibility of an encounter, making daily life a series of risk assessments. Interestingly, early humans sometimes used fire strategically to ward off predators. Flames provided light, warmth, and a psychological barrier against some animals. However, fire required fuel, maintenance, and careful placement, particularly when near flammable vegetation. Mismanagement could result in injury, exposure, or attracting attention from predators drawn to smoke or movement. Even fire, a tool of survival, demanded skill and vigilance. Scavenging and hunting often intersected. Humans would follow predator tracks to locate potential food sources or avoid areas where larger predators had claimed territory. This required understanding not only the habits of the animals, but also the risk of encountering them directly. The line between opportunity and danger was thin, and every decision carried immediate consequences. By the end of the day, you would be exhausted, not only physically, but mentally. Your senses would be heightened from constant vigilance, your muscles sore from running, climbing, and lifting, and your mind preoccupied with strategies to survive the next predator encounter. Survival was not a series of isolated events.
It was a continuous, high-stakes performance requiring endurance, awareness, and adaptability.
In prehistoric times, predators were not just a part of the ecosystem. They were the ultimate test of human resilience. Survival demanded learning, observation, and the ability to anticipate threats before they became fatal. The environment rewarded those who could adapt and punished those who hesitated or underestimated the danger. A single lapse could erase hours of careful strategy, leaving the human body exposed to the raw power of nature. By the time night approached, you would understand a terrifying truth. Survival was not guaranteed, and even skill, strength, and cunning could only delay the inevitable. Each encounter with a predator was a reminder that life in prehistoric times was a constant negotiation with forces far beyond human control. The day was relentless, unyielding, and unforgiving, and by the end, your body and mind would be pushed to their absolute limits. In this world, you quickly realize that a single day is enough to break the unprepared, overwhelm the cautious, and challenge even the most capable. The predators of prehistoric times were not merely obstacles, they were teachers, testing endurance, awareness, and the ability to survive in a world where danger was omnipresent. By the time you reach the 10th day, or even the 10th hour, if we are honest, in prehistoric survival, it becomes clear that nature itself is an adversary, just as deadly as the predators you try to avoid. Prehistoric humans had no shelters built to modern standards, no weatherproof clothing, and no early warning systems for storms, floods, or freezing nights. Every environmental factor, from the scorching sun to the icy wind, demanded immediate attention and constant adaptation. The climate was unpredictable, extreme, and relentless, and the human body was never allowed a moment of reprieve. Imagine waking to a biting wind, the air sharp and cold as frost coats the ground. Even a few minutes of exposure without shelter could leave fingers numb, muscles stiff, and energy reserves plummeting. The human body burns enormous amounts of calories just to maintain core temperature in such conditions. Without adequate food, warmth, or insulation, hypothermia could set in before you even realize it. And hypothermia was just one of many environmental threats. Extreme heat, torrential rain, or sudden snowstorms could strike without warning, leaving early humans scrambling to find cover. Shelter was critical, yet almost always inadequate. A cave might provide some protection, but caves were home to predators, insects, and disease-carrying vermin. Open-air shelters made from branches, leaves, and animal hides offered minimal defense against wind, rain, or cold. Constructing even these primitive structures required energy, skill, and materials that were not always available nearby. Every attempt to protect yourself from the elements was a temporary, fragile solution, one that could fail at any moment. Floods and rising rivers were equally unforgiving. Heavy rains could swell streams and rivers overnight, washing away food sources, dislodging makeshift shelters, and carrying away supplies that had been painstakingly gathered. In low-lying areas, water could rise rapidly, forcing humans to flee with little warning. Those who hesitated risked being swept away or trapped in unsafe locations. Even crossing rivers for food or water became an exercise in careful calculation. A single misstep in strong currents could result in drowning. Wildfires presented a different kind of challenge.
A spark from a lightning strike, a careless fire for warmth, or even the natural drying of vegetation could lead to a devastating blaze. Unlike today, where fire control is taken for granted, prehistoric humans had to constantly monitor flames and be ready to extinguish them or move entirely to safer ground. Fires could destroy shelter, food sources, and even entire territories, forcing constant relocation and adaptation. The threat of fire was not just physical, it was logistical, reshaping survival strategies instantly. Storms brought sudden darkness, heavy rainfall, and powerful winds that could knock down trees and scatter essential resources. Early humans had no metal tools to reinforce shelters or sturdy structures to rely upon. Every violent gust could turn a temporary haven into a death trap. Lightning strikes, falling branches, and flash floods created unpredictable hazards, making movement and survival a constant gamble. Temperature swings were brutal. Daytime might bring scorching heat that drains energy and increases the risk of dehydration. Nights could be freezing, forcing the body to work overtime just to maintain warmth. Without fire, animal hides, or shelter, exposure alone was enough to incapacitate or kill. Humans had to plan every activity around these extremes, balancing the need for food gathering and hunting with protection from the elements. The environment demanded constant attention. Ignoring it, even for a short period, could be fatal. Prehistoric humans also faced geological challenges. Uneven terrain, cliffs, quicksand, and unstable ground posed risks of falls or injury. Traversing forests, plains, and rocky areas required constant observation of the landscape. A sprained ankle, broken limb, or fall could leave a person helpless, unable to hunt, forage, or escape predators. Even minor injuries were amplified in severity because they limited mobility and increased vulnerability to other hazards. Survival was as much about maintaining physical integrity as it was about finding food or avoiding predators. Natural disasters could strike suddenly. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and landslides reshaped the environment in moments. These events not only destroyed shelters and food caches, but also displaced entire groups, forcing humans into unfamiliar and dangerous territories. The unpredictability of such events meant that planning was often futile. Survival depended on rapid adaptation, improvisation, and luck. Even the most experienced and cautious humans could be undone in seconds by the forces of nature. Water availability was another constant challenge. Droughts could turn once plentiful rivers and lakes into parched land. Scarce water sources were heavily contested, both by humans and animals. Drinking from stagnant pools carried the risk of disease, yet walking miles for clean water drained precious energy and exposed humans to predators. Every sip, every journey, every choice was a negotiation with survival itself. Food scarcity was often a direct consequence of climate. Seasonal shifts could drastically reduce the availability of edible plants, berries, or animals. Prehistoric humans had to anticipate these changes, track migrating herds, and develop strategies to store or preserve food. Even then, hunger was a constant companion, sapping energy and impairing judgment. Weakness from malnutrition compounded every environmental risk, making simple tasks like climbing, running, or foraging exponentially more dangerous. The psychological toll of surviving in such extreme conditions cannot be overstated. Constant exposure to environmental threats creates stress, anxiety, and fatigue.
humans had to maintain focus, vigilance, and problem-solving abilities even when physically exhausted or mentally drained. Every decision carried consequences, and the margin for error was minuscule. The mental and emotional strain of living in such a hostile environment was as punishing as the physical challenges. In addition to natural forces, humans also had to contend with competition. Rival groups or territorial animals could limit access to resources. Prehistoric humans often fought for prime hunting grounds, water sources, and shelter locations. Conflict was not merely optional, it was a matter of survival. Cooperation was essential within groups, but when resources dwindled, tension and competition escalated, adding yet another layer of danger to an already precarious existence. By the end of the day, after navigating storms, avoiding floods, braving temperature extremes, and searching for food and water, humans were physically drained and mentally taxed. Sleep was a brief and vulnerable state, as nocturnal predators, falling debris, or sudden weather shifts could strike without warning. Rest provided only temporary relief, as survival required relentless attention and constant adaptation. In prehistoric times, climate and environmental hazards were as formidable as predators. Every day was a negotiation with elements beyond human control and even skill. Preparation and caution could not guarantee survival. Each challenge tested physical strength, endurance, knowledge, and adaptability. To last even a single day in such conditions demanded alertness, intelligence, and resilience. The natural world was not just a backdrop for survival, it was the ultimate adversary, shaping human behavior, ingenuity, and limits at every moment. By the end of a day spent facing the forces of nature, humans were exhausted, wary, and acutely aware of their vulnerability. Life was fragile, fleeting, and entirely contingent upon skill, knowledge, and a measure of luck. Survival was not just about avoiding predators or finding food. It was about outlasting the unyielding, indifferent, and sometimes violent natural world. One misstep, one misjudged decision, and the harshness of prehistoric life would exact its toll, proving that enduring even a day was an extraordinary achievement. By the time prehistoric humans began to establish territories, survival was no longer just about evading predators or enduring harsh environmental conditions. It was about defending resources, asserting dominance, and navigating conflicts with other groups of humans. Territorial disputes, rivalries, and occasional skirmishes were an inevitable part of life, and understanding how dangerous these encounters could be is key to realizing why lasting a day in prehistoric times was far from simple. Every decision regarding movement, hunting grounds, or resource gathering could spark conflict, and those without experience or caution often paid a severe price. Groups of early humans were constantly aware of the boundaries that separated their territory from others. These boundaries were rarely marked on a map or formally agreed upon. They were understood through observation, signs, and experience. Broken branches, footprints, discarded tools, and even the calls of animals all indicated the presence of others nearby. Reading these signs required acute observation skills and knowledge accumulated over years of experience. Misinterpreting them could result in wandering into another group's hunting grounds, directly inviting confrontation. Confrontations could range from subtle threats to deadly combat. Many skirmishes began as posturing, loud vocalizations, exaggerated movements, or displays of strength designed to intimidate intruders without bloodshed. These warnings were serious. Ignoring them often escalated the situation. Humans were not the only creatures to defend their territories fiercely, and in prehistoric times, underestimating the resolve of another group could be fatal. Even a minor miscalculation in tone, timing, or approach could trigger aggression that left no opportunity for negotiation or retreat. Weapons were rudimentary but lethal. Sharpened stones, wooden spears, clubs, and bones could inflict serious injuries. Even a single well-placed strike could incapacitate or kill, and fights were rarely clean. Combat in prehistoric times was messy, chaotic, and brutal, leaving participants vulnerable not only to injury, but also to opportunistic predators drawn by the noise, scent, or chaos. Engaging in conflict was a high-risk endeavor, and those without strength, strategy, or allies were unlikely to survive. In addition to direct combat, territorial disputes often included subtle forms of competition. Rival groups might attempt to steal food, destroy shelters, or scare away members of another tribe. These indirect attacks were just as dangerous, as they forced early humans to expend energy defending resources while remaining alert to both human and animal threats. Scarcity of food and water heightened tensions, making even minor encroachments potentially deadly. Every day required constant negotiation of space and resources, and the cost of mistakes was high. Knowledge of the terrain was a critical advantage. Groups familiar with rivers, forests, caves, and natural barriers could maneuver more effectively, setting ambushes, escaping quickly, or defending strategically valuable locations. Outsiders, unfamiliar with the geography, were at a severe disadvantage. They were vulnerable to traps, hidden threats, and strategic blockades. Survival required not just physical skill, but mental mapping, careful observation, and an ability to predict the movements of rivals. Social organization played a significant role in these conflicts. Groups relied on cooperation, coordination, and collective strategy to defend resources or mount attacks. Communication, trust, and social bonds were essential. A breakdown in cooperation could lead to failure and death. Within groups, hierarchies influenced who made decisions, who led attacks, and who faced the highest risks. Status was earned through skill, bravery, and contribution to group survival. Those who could not keep pace or who challenged authority risked ostracism or being left exposed to danger. Even small groups could pose serious threats. While large numbers were advantageous in direct combat, smaller, agile groups were capable of surprise raids, stealth attacks, and ambushes. Encountering a small but coordinated enemy could leave a larger but less disciplined group in peril. Prehistoric humans had to develop strategies not just for strength, but for agility, anticipation, and teamwork, learning to adapt to unpredictable situations with limited resources. Encounters with rival groups were not limited to adults. Children and the elderly were particularly vulnerable during conflicts. They could slow down movement, become targets, or limit the group's ability to respond quickly. Protecting all members of the group while maintaining vigilance and strategic advantage added another layer of complexity to survival. Every decision had to account for the weakest individuals, balancing the immediate needs of survival with long-term group cohesion.
Resource scarcity intensified conflict. Food, water, shelter, and firewood were finite and vital. During harsh seasons, competition escalated, and confrontations became more frequent and violent. Groups needed to constantly assess the risks of venturing into contested areas against the potential rewards. A failed raid or unsuccessful hunting attempt could leave a group exposed, hungry, and demoralized, while a successful endeavor might provoke retaliation. Prehistoric life was a continuous cycle of risk assessment, action, and adaptation, with stakes that were often life or death. Environmental factors could amplify human conflicts. Difficult terrain, changing weather, or predator activity could dictate the timing, location, and tactics of disputes. A river crossing might leave one group stranded and vulnerable, a thunderstorm could disrupt movement, or a predator's presence could force the abandonment of an ambush. Survival depended on anticipating these factors and incorporating them into planning, often with very little information. Mistakes could be catastrophic. Psychological stress from constant vigilance and conflict took a heavy toll. Anxiety, fatigue, and fear impaired judgment and coordination, making individuals more vulnerable to mistakes. Prehistoric humans had to maintain alertness even when exhausted, as a lapse could mean injury, capture, or death. The mental and emotional strain of defending territory, competing for resources, and avoiding predators created a relentless cycle of stress that eroded resilience. In addition to human rivals, scavengers and opportunistic predators were attracted to conflict zones. Blood, noise, and movement drew wolves, hyenas, and other dangerous animals. Fighting humans were not isolated threats. They shared the environment with creatures that could exploit even minor weaknesses. Every battle required consideration not only of the human opponent, but also of the wider ecosystem in which the conflict took place. Group cohesion was constantly tested. Leadership, coordination, and communication determined outcomes. Disagreements, hesitation, or failure to follow strategy could leave individuals exposed and increase casualties. Survival required not only physical skill, but emotional intelligence, social awareness, and the ability to respond rapidly to changing circumstances. Prehistoric life demanded mastery of both the body and the mind. By the end of a day spent navigating human conflict, the challenges were cumulative. Exhaustion, hunger, injuries, and stress combined to create a fragile equilibrium. The survivors were often physically battered, mentally strained, and constantly aware that the threats would resume with the next sunrise. Survival was not measured by simple endurance, but by the ability to anticipate danger, respond to threats, and maintain cohesion and vigilance under relentless pressure. Territorial disputes in prehistoric times were not occasional. They were a constant feature of life. The world demanded attention, skill, and strategy, and even minor errors could have severe consequences. To survive a day in this context required not only physical endurance, but situational awareness, social intelligence, and the ability to respond to the unexpected. A single misjudgment could spell the end, while each successful navigation reinforced the extraordinary resilience required to endure in a world where danger was omnipresent. Ultimately, survival in prehistoric times was a continuous negotiation with both nature and other humans. Every encounter, every decision, and every movement carried the potential for life or death.
By the end of a day spent defending territory and navigating human conflict, it became abundantly clear that lasting even a single day required skill, courage, vigilance, and an almost constant awareness of the environment, the animals, and the people around you. One day in prehistoric times was enough to teach a harsh, unyielding lesson about what it truly meant to survive. If you ever found yourself suddenly dropped into prehistoric times, you might think the ground is your biggest problem. Sharp rocks, thorny plants, creatures hiding in the brush. But the sky itself would be just as determined to ruin your day. In the modern world, weather apps warn you about storms, extreme heat, or incoming rain. In prehistory, there was no warning system. The only app you had was your eyes, and even those wouldn't help you much when the sky decided to unleash chaos. The environment was not simply unfriendly, it was actively unpredictable, wildly aggressive, and often fatal. Imagine waking up on a humid prehistoric morning. The air is heavy, thick, almost syrupy as it presses against your lungs. Humidity today might make you sweat a little. In prehistoric times, it meant mold, parasites, disease, and exhaustion creeping into your bones. Your modern body isn't built for air that feels like someone draped a hot, wet blanket over your entire existence. Every breath tastes like damp earth, and staying dry is nearly impossible. Moisture clings to your skin, soaks your clothing, if you even manage to have clothing, and begins to breed bacteria faster than you can wipe them away. Just surviving the weather was a constant battle. But humidity was only one part of the problem. Temperature extremes could kill you before you even had time to complain. You might imagine prehistoric climates as warm and jungle-like, and sometimes that was true. But Earth was moody. One region could be blisteringly hot, another freezing, and sometimes both could happen in the same place, depending on the year. Volcanic activity, shifting climates, continental movement, all of these shaped chaotic, inconsistent weather patterns. The environment didn't care if you were cold or sweating or struggling. It simply kept shifting. If you couldn't adapt quickly, you became a fossil. Heat waves could roast you alive. Without shade, hydration, or even the concept of electrolytes, your body would collapse long before sunset. Standing in direct sun for an hour could burn your skin raw, blistering it until it peeled. The UV exposure alone would be enough to send you into shock. And unlike today, there were no hats, no sunscreen, no shelters beyond whatever crude structure you could scramble together using sticks, leaves, and panic. Not to mention, most shade wasn't safe. Shade was where predators like to rest. You'd be stuck choosing between sunstroke and becoming someone else's lunch. Cold weather was equally cruel. In some prehistoric periods, temperatures plummeted without warning. Night could fall like a trapdoor opening beneath you, dropping the temperature dozens of degrees in what felt like minutes. Your modern body, used to heated homes, warm jackets, and electric blankets, would not last long. Hypothermia would creep into your fingers, your toes, and eventually your core. Shivering would turn into numbness, numbness into exhaustion, and exhaustion into the kind of sleep you never wake up from. Even starting a fire was a constant challenge, and keeping it lit was almost an art form. One gust of wind could erase hours of effort. Speaking of wind, prehistoric storms were not the gentle, apologetic versions we mostly deal with today. The atmosphere was wilder, thicker with particles, driven by forces that barely exist now.
Storm systems were aggressive, sweeping across huge areas with violent speed. Tornadoes could form unexpectedly. Lightning storms could set entire forests ablaze. You'd be hiding under a rock ledge, listening to thunder so loud it vibrated your bones. And when the rain came, it wouldn't politely patter. It would crash down in sheets, turning solid ground into slippery mud and flooding areas quickly. If you were near a river, you'd be swept away before you even realized the water level was rising. Prehistoric lightning wasn't just dangerous, it was deadly on a scale you're not prepared for. Without modern electrical grounding and infrastructure, lightning strikes hit the ground, trees, open areas, and even water constantly. If you were near tall plants or standing in a clearing, you'd be a walking lightning rod. There are prehistoric fossil sites showing trees that were repeatedly hit and charred. Imagine standing beneath one when it happens. Storms also drove animals into frenzy. Herbivores panicked. Predators took advantage of the confusion. Floodwaters pushed dangerous creatures into new territories, including yours. A simple rainfall could send crocodile-like predators or giant snakes slithering straight toward your temporary camp. You'd be dodging flooding, lightning, and animals all at once. Then there were prehistoric winds that carried more than rain. They carried ash from volcanic eruptions, thick, choking particles you'd inhale with every breath. Volcanic ash wasn't soft dust. It was sharp, tiny shards of stone and glass. One inhalation could cut your lungs from the inside. Even being nearby meant your eyes would burn, your throat would swell, and your breathing would become labored. Ash could blanket entire ecosystems, blocking sunlight for days. You'd stumble through a gray fog, disoriented and gasping, praying for clean air. Sometimes the sky didn't bring storms or ash, it brought fire. Dry seasons combined with lightning meant massive wildfires that could stretch for miles, sweeping across landscapes at terrifying speed. You can't outrun prehistoric fire. Smoke would fill your lungs long before flames reached you. Animals fled in mass, causing stampedes and chaos. The heat would be unbearable long before you even saw the fire. Your only chance of survival would be to find water or an open stone area, neither of which were guaranteed. Even when the weather wasn't actively trying to kill you, it made daily living nearly impossible. Food spoiled faster. Meat rotted within hours in heat and humidity. Water sources were uncertain, some too salty, others filled with parasites. And speaking of parasites, weather controlled them too. Warm, wet conditions created perfect breeding grounds for insects. Swarms of biting flies, mosquitoes, and other prehistoric bugs would attack relentlessly. These weren't your normal mosquitoes. Some were massive, aggressive, and potentially disease-carrying. Every bite opened your skin to infection. Every scratch made it worse. And if you think illness from weather is just an inconvenience, think again. Without antibiotics, even a simple skin infection from constant dampness or insect bites could turn deadly. Fever would spread through your body, your strength fading. You'd hallucinate, struggle to stand, and eventually collapse. Cold chills would shake you even in warm weather as your body failed to fight off infection. Even the stars weren't exactly comforting. With no modern light pollution, prehistoric skies were pitch black. That might sound beautiful, but imagine being surrounded by total darkness, hearing distant growls and footsteps, but unable to see anything. Temperature drops with darkness, and without fire, the cold would hit you fast. You'd hug your arms around yourself, shivering, trying to stay awake so you didn't slip into hypothermic sleep.
Every sound would echo through the night, making you wonder what creature was creeping toward you. Weather shapes everything in prehistoric life: safety, food, shelter, movement, survival. And the sky had no mercy. It changed whenever it wanted, without logic, without pattern, without care for the fragile human trying to adapt. Your modern body, used to controlled climates and stable shelter, simply isn't built for an environment that wild. Prehistoric survival wasn't about fighting predators alone. It was about fighting the world itself. And the world wasn't on your side. You wake up to the sound of distant thunder. Except it's not thunder. It's the ground itself trembling, humming like something massive is moving beneath the soil. At first, you think it's an earthquake. Prehistoric Earth shakes all the time. Volcanoes burp, tectonic plates grind like giant stone teeth. But this is different. This feels rhythmic. You rise slowly, wiping dust from your face, and listen. Thud, thud, thud. It's steady, heavy, alive. And suddenly, you realize, this isn't the earth moving. Something huge is walking. You try to stand, but your legs are stiff from sleeping on stone and dirt. You take a few shaky steps toward the clearing, pushing through ferns taller than you are. The plants brush against your arms like damp feathers. There's a strange smell in the air, sweet, sour, almost metallic. Life in prehistoric times has its own perfume, one made of wet leaves, animal musk, and the constant presence of things that could eat you. When you reach the edge of the clearing, you freeze. Across the open field, a herd of enormous creatures grazes peacefully. Long necks sway like tree trunks in the wind. Tails stretch out behind them like armored cables. They are sauropods, massive, gentle giants who could squash you without even noticing. One of them suddenly cranes its neck downward to tear a branch off a tree, and the creak of its movement reminds you just how small you are. Your heart is pounding, not because the sauropods are dangerous. They're not, at least not intentionally. But anything that weighs as much as a dozen elephants stacked together is a danger by default. One wrong step, and you'll become a red smear on the grass. You try to move quietly, but the grass crunches under your feet, loud enough to make your stomach tighten. Just as you're considering sneaking away, something else moves in the trees to your left, a shadow, fast and low. You know by now that fast and low is never good. You crouch, slowing your breath, trying not to attract attention. The shadow emerges again, and this time you see it clearly. A pack of small carnivorous dinosaurs, maybe 2 or 3 feet tall, dart through the brush. They move with unnerving speed, their heads snapping side to side as they follow some scent trail. Thankfully, it's not yours. They seem more interested in something deeper in the forest, something unfortunate and probably already dead. You thank whatever prehistoric luck you have left and stay still until the pack disappears. When you rise again, the sky has shifted. Clouds are gathering, thick and dark, swirling like water spiraling down a drain. Storms in this era aren't like modern storms. They don't politely roll in with a bit of drizzle. They erupt, violent and unpredictable. You hear a crack in the sky that makes your skin prickle. You start moving toward the cave you used last night, but the wind hits you before you make it far. It's warm at first, like someone opened an oven door. Then it becomes cold so quickly your skin breaks into goosebumps.
Trees sway violently, their branches snapping like bones. The sauropods lift their heads, nervous, their massive bodies shifting. Another crack splits the air, and rain pours down, thick, heavy drops that sting when they hit your skin. You sprint toward the nearest cluster of rocks, struggling to see through the sheets of water. Lightning forks across the sky, illuminating everything in a harsh white blaze. For half a second, you see the entire world. Ferns whipping in the wind, puddles forming instantly, thunderclouds boiling overhead. And something else. A large predator standing at the tree line. You only saw its silhouette for a moment, but it was enough. A massive head. A thick tail. Powerful legs. Even in shadow, it radiated danger. You duck behind a boulder, heart hammering in your chest, praying that the storm masks your presence. You stay there for what feels like forever, listening to the rain hammering against the rock. Every sound feels amplified. The crack of thunder, the splash of water, the howl of wind. You imagine the predator moving through the storm, blind but hungry, smelling for warm flesh. Eventually, the thunder fades, and the rain softens. You wait a bit longer, just in case, and then slowly peek around the rock. The clearing is empty. No giant predator, no pack of scavengers, just soaked grass and broken branches. You start walking again, drenched, cold, but alive. The storm has passed, though the clouds still cling to the sky like smoke. Every step squishes in the mud. Your clothes cling to your skin, heavy and miserable. Prehistoric survival doesn't give you a break. Every day is a test. Every night is a gamble. As you trudge forward, you notice prints in the mud. Huge ones, three-toed, deep enough to hold puddles. They lead toward the forest you need to cross. Perfect. Exactly what you didn't want. Still, you can't stay in the open. The mud is cooling fast, and soon night will come. Nights here are worse than days. You've learned that firsthand. You follow the path cautiously, stepping where the mud is firmer. Inside the forest, the air is different, heavy, still. The storm didn't touch the ground here. Leaves drip lazily, but the canopy above is so thick that barely a drop reached the soil. You move almost silently because everything is wet. Then you hear it, breezing, slow, deep. You turn your head slightly. Something massive is asleep near the far end of the forest. You can't see it, but you don't need to. You can smell it too. Musky, warm, animal. A smell that says predator. You do what every survival instinct in your body screams at you to do. You freeze. You don't move. You don't even breathe. The wind shifts slightly, carrying your scent toward whatever is sleeping. You pray it doesn't notice. Minutes pass. Long, painful minutes. You force yourself to move backward, inch by inch, trying to avoid stepping on anything that could snap. A single twig could kill you, literally. When you finally escape the forest, the sun is setting. The sky glows red and orange, streaked with smoke-like clouds. You know you need shelter immediately. The storm cooled everything down, and prehistoric nights can get cold enough to kill. You search the rocky hillside until you find a narrow crevice. It's not perfect, but it's hidden, and more importantly, it's dry. Inside, you curl up, shivering, pulling leaves and grass around you like a makeshift blanket. It doesn't help much, but it's better than nothing. As you lie there, exhausted,
you realize something's strange. Today wasn't even the worst day you've had. Just another prehistoric reminder. Danger doesn't take breaks, storms don't schedule themselves, and even the peaceful moments are illusions. Everything here is bigger than you, faster than you, stronger than you, or hungrier than you. And you? You're the weird, hairless creature trying to survive long enough to see another sunrise. Life in prehistoric times demanded constant movement. Staying still for too long meant death, either from predators, starvation, rival groups, or the simple collapse of your own body under an unforgiving environment. By the time you reach this part of the journey, you've already survived stampedes, bone infections, starvation, extreme weather, predators, and even your own poor choices. But now you face a challenge that every prehistoric human dealt with from birth to death: the exhausting, endless struggle to migrate. Nothing in your world stays the same for long. The seasons don't politely follow a calendar. Rains come and go unpredictably. Rivers shift. Herds disappear. Forests die and regrow somewhere else. The landscape is always changing, and if you don't change with it, you simply don't make it. Your group might leave behind a familiar valley because the berries stopped growing, or because the groundwater dried up, or because the animals you hunted followed a new path. It doesn't matter if you feel tired or if your feet are bleeding. You walk or you die. You're cold, bruised, hungry, and limping, but the group moves and you have no choice. Migration is not an event, it's a lifestyle. It's the rhythm of existence. But for someone like you, raised in the comfort of stable buildings, supermarkets, and predictable seasons, this constant motion feels like torture. Every morning begins with aching joints, damp furs, sore muscles, and the dread of walking unknown distances across rough terrain. You'd like to rest for one more hour, maybe simply lie under the rising sun and breathe. But rest is a luxury your prehistoric companions don't recognize. Rest attracts predators. Rest means falling behind. Rest means weakness, and weakness is unacceptable. Your day begins before the sky fully brightens. Everyone stirs at the same moment because the cold becomes unbearable, or because the fire has died, or because the faint rumble of migrating animals signals movement. There are no gentle alarms or warm baths. You push yourself off the hard ground and feel every rock imprint still pressed into your skin. Your bed is a patch of earth and a bundle of animal skins that smell like dried sweat, old smoke, and wet fur. You might think you'd get used to it, but you never really do. Your body just learns not to complain as loudly. Walking begins immediately. No breakfast feast. Maybe a few dried roots or a strip of old meat if you're lucky. The group starts moving as the sky turns pale. Every day's path is different. Sometimes you trek through grasslands with sun beating down on your neck until your hair grows hot enough to burn your fingers. Sometimes you push through forests where the ground is slippery with decaying leaves, where insects bite your ankles, where thorny plants slice open your legs. Sometimes you climb rocky hills that scrape your hands and force your breath out in painful bursts. And the ground isn't flat and polished like a modern walkway. Every step is uneven. Every stone threatens to twist your ankle. Every log is a trap. Your modern shoes would fall apart in hours. Prehistoric footwear is crude, made of softened hide stuffed with grass. They protect you from frostbite, but they don't prevent blisters. By mid-morning, your feet are swollen, your calves ache, and your lower back screams from carrying whatever bundle the group assigned to you. Everyone carries something: meat, skins, tools, babies, bundles of firewood. If you carry nothing, you're dead weight. If you're dead weight, you're a liability. No one carries you, no one comforts you. You walk. Migration tests your patience as much as your strength. You might think walking for hours is boring, but boredom is dangerous here. When you zone out or let your mind drift, your foot slips into a hole, or you grab a plant that burns your skin, or you miss the warning signs of an approaching predator. You have to stay alert constantly. Every shadow could hide danger. Every distant sound could be a threat. Your heart stays on edge all day long, pounding too fast, wasting energy you desperately need.
The weather becomes your greatest enemy. In the heat, sweat evaporates quickly, leaving salt on your skin and a heavy thirst in your throat. But water sources are unpredictable. Streams dry up. Lakes shrink. Sometimes you walk miles before finding water, and when you do, it might be muddy, insect-infested, or contaminated by animal droppings. But you drink it anyway, because dehydration kills faster than bacteria. And you don't get a water bottle. You cup your hands, or use a hollowed bone, or simply press your lips to the water's surface. Then there's the cold. Nights are brutal. Temperatures drop sharply, especially in open plains or highlands. If you stopped early to rest, you'd freeze. So the group walks until the last light fades, long after your legs beg for mercy. Your breath becomes white vapor. Your fingers grow stiff. You pull your furs tighter, but wind cuts through everything. As your body shivers violently, you're reminded that prehistoric humans didn't fear hunger or predators nearly as much as they feared cold. Cold kills without warning. Cold kills silently. Cold kills even the strong. During migrations, the group doesn't talk much. Words waste energy. Voices alert predators. Most communication happens through gestures or grunts. You walk in weary silence, listening to the crunch of footsteps and the wind sweeping across the land. Your mind sometimes wanders to memories of modern comforts: cars, heaters, blankets, snacks. But thinking about those only makes the pain worse, so you focus on survival. Hunting becomes tougher during migrations. Animals move unpredictably. Prey is faster, smarter, and more alert. The group might try hunting deer or antelope along the way, but success isn't guaranteed. Sometimes you go days without fresh meat. You eat roots, berries, insect larvae, or whatever edible scraps the land offers. It's never enough. Your stomach feels smaller each day, but the hunger never leaves. It gnaws at your ribs, at your spine, at your thoughts. Migration also intensifies danger from rival groups. Territory is everything, and crossing someone else's hunting grounds can lead to disaster. You might see smoke from a distant fire or footprints in soft mud. The group becomes tense. Weapons come out, movement slows, arguments break out, fear rises. These encounters can end in trade, avoidance, or violence. There's no guarantee which. And you, with no combat training and shaky legs, are the easiest target. The emotional toll is just as heavy. The constant pressure to stay alert, stay strong, stay silent, stay moving, it grinds your spirit. You can't express frustration. You can't complain. You can't cry. Any sign of weakness threatens group morale, and group morale is survival. One discouraged person can slow the group, cause mistakes, or attract predators. You force every emotion deep inside, burying them under the weight of necessity. Prehistoric life doesn't care about your mental health. It only cares if you keep moving. Even when the day finally ends, relief is minimal. There's no cozy campsite, no tents, no chairs. The group picks a temporary spot sheltered by rocks or trees. Everyone begins working immediately, collecting wood, scraping hides, repairing tools, setting up a weak fire. The fire might be too small to provide real warmth, but it keeps predators wary. Night is full of sounds: cracking branches, distant roars, rustling grass. You sleep lightly, if at all. Your dreams are filled with hunger, fear, and exhaustion. The next morning, the cycle begins again. For prehistoric humans, migration was a necessity, not a challenge. Their bodies adapted, their minds hardened, their spirits accepted the rhythm of endless movement. But for you, raised in a world where distance is measured by rides, not footsteps, where weather is avoided by stepping indoors, where water and food are guaranteed, migration becomes a physical and emotional nightmare. You don't last a week before your feet become infected, your strength collapses, your pace slows, and your group leaves you behind, not out of cruelty, but out of survival. In prehistoric times, the world didn't slow down for anyone, and you, struggling to breathe, struggling to walk, struggling to endure the endless march, learn the harsh truth. In a world that never stops moving, you simply can't keep up. By the time evening settles over prehistoric Earth, you begin to understand a painful truth. Surviving the day was the easy part. Now you must survive the night. And in a world where nothing is domesticated, nothing is predictable, and everything is hungry, nighttime is less a peaceful natural rhythm and more a countdown to panic. The fading light feels like a warning, the planet telling you, very clearly, you don't belong here. The temperature drops shockingly fast. Without fire, warmth, or shelter, you can already feel the cold tightening around your fingers and toes. It's not just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. Hypothermia doesn't politely wait for sunrise. It sinks its claws into you the moment your body can't keep up. Even prehistoric humans understood this, which is exactly why they didn't wander alone and unprepared. They built shelters, they nested in caves, they fashioned hides into clothing. You have, well, nothing but your modern brain and the sudden realization that your modern brain isn't nearly as clever as you thought. You consider finding a cave, but then you remember that animals love caves. Big animals, territorial animals, animals who do not care that you need a place to sleep. So you do what any desperate, underprepared person would do. You start searching for a patch of foliage, a gap between some rocks, anything that might offer protection. But prehistoric landscapes aren't manicured parks. The ground is uneven, the plants are thorny, and every rustle in the darkness sounds like the beginning of the end. When you finally settle into a half-suitable depression beneath a tangle of tall ferns, you make the mistake of thinking you found safety. You haven't, not even close. The sounds begin almost immediately. Low grunts, distant howls, the brittle crack of something stepping on twigs. You try to remind yourself that most predators prefer easy prey, that they probably won't go out of their way to find you. But guess what you are right now? Easy prey. A soft, defenseless, exhausted human who smells like fear and has no weapons, no fire, and no tribe to call out to.
To a nocturnal hunter, you might as well be a snack-sized invitation. As the darkness thickens, you begin to understand how prehistoric people viewed the world. Not as a quiet, romantic wilderness, but as a living battlefield where nighttime belonged to creatures far better adapted than you. Your hearing becomes your best friend and your worst enemy. Every tiny movement becomes a looming threat. You can't see anything, but you feel everything. The oppressive weight of the darkness, the shifting of leaves, the way the ground seems to vibrate with distant footsteps. Hours stretch painfully. Sleep isn't even an option. Your body demands rest, but your brain knows rest is the fastest way to become something's midnight meal. And even if no predator finds you, the cold is relentless. You curl up tighter, shivering uncontrollably, knowing that prehistoric people would have long since lit a fire or huddled with others. They had rituals, systems, instincts. You have teeth chattering loud enough to announce your location to the whole ecosystem. At one point, you hear a snort, a loud, guttural exhale that freezes your blood. You don't know what made it, but you know it's close, very close. The ferns tremble slightly, and you press your body into the dirt, holding your breath until your lungs ache. Minutes pass like hours. The sniffing moves on, but the panic stays lodged in your chest. This is the moment you finally understand why prehistoric humans rarely traveled alone. Humans weren't built to be solitary. Community was survival. Fire was survival. Tools were survival. Without them, you're nothing but a vulnerable primate praying the night ends quickly. But prehistoric nights are long. The stars above you are brighter than anything you've ever seen, but you don't have the luxury of appreciating them. They are just silent witnesses to your slow, miserable unraveling. You think maybe dawn is close, because surely the night must be half over by now. But when you check the sky again, the stars haven't moved, not even an inch. Time has stopped being a helpful concept. Eventually, your body shuts down despite your fear. You drift into a light, unstable sleep, the kind that tears itself awake with every sound. You dream of warmth, of walls, of streetlights, of anything but this raw exposure. Even your subconscious knows you're not meant to be here. When the first pale light of morning seeps into the sky, you're not relieved, you're stunned that you're still alive. Every part of you aches. Your skin is numb, your limbs stiff, your brain foggy. You didn't thrive, you didn't adapt. You just survived by accident, like a modern human who stumbled through a museum exhibit and accidentally tripped into real prehistory. As the sun lifts itself above the horizon, warming the earth and burning away the shadows, you feel a desperate gratitude. But you also understand something else, something humbling. For prehistoric humans, this wasn't a nightmare scenario. This was every night. And if the day ahead looks anything like the one you just endured, then your chances of repeating the survival streak are, let's say, slim. Very slim.